Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Des Moines. Good morning, Denver.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted you're here to share with me this information about a topic that is dear to my heart. I'm going to start with my own angina monologue. I want to tell you about what happened to me. My hope is that I can keep it from ever happening to you by helping you. Now, I'm someone who never should have had a heart attack. In my youth, I was a ballet dancer for decades. I did aerobic exercise every day. I was slim. I ate carefully. And after I stopped dancing professionally, I went to college and got a degree in psychology, started teaching, and I invented a course on the psychology of stress when this was a very new field in the 1970s. It was so new I had to write the textbook. And I followed all my own advice. I used to walk around the campus and people would look at me and say, "It's obvious you're a stress expert. You just look so mellow." I didn't have any family history, or so I thought. It was an utter shock to me when I had a heart attack. And it happened this way. I had retired. I was taking a water aerobics class. I had been feeling tired recently. I decided I was going to push myself a little harder, the dancer, you know. We were doing jumping jacks, and so I pushed off extra hard, and in the air, in this position, I suddenly felt an invisible hand press against my chest, briefly. And for 1 second only, I was completely out of air. I landed and I was all right. Somehow, by the grace of God, I knew what was happening to me. I do not know how. I still don't know how, but I turned to the woman next to me and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm having a heart attack." I climbed out of the pool, got dressed, and went to my internist. I told him what had happened, and he looked grave, but he did all the tests on me, the EKG, the blood test that I'll be telling you about. And he said, "Well, frankly, I can't find anything wrong with you. From my point of view, you could go right back on stage and start dancing right now. But I think you should see a cardiologist." Now, we set up an appointment 2 weeks in the future, and he added life-saving advice. He said to me, "If you should feel worse before then, go straight to the ER. Don't bother to call me." Well, I went home and I was all right, but in a few days I started to feel a little tired, a little nauseated, a little chilled. Well, it was late January. This is not unusual. But one morning I got up and something was very different. I felt all of this, and I also felt as if I wanted to curl up in a ball and go to sleep in the fetal position. I remember reading about people who've almost frozen to death in snowdrifts, and that's how I felt, as if I just wanted to let go and give up. And then an alarm bell went off in my brain, and I said, "If you do that, you will surely die." So I got to the ER, and they checked me in right away. They took me very seriously. They put me in bed, and they did the same tests my internist had done, and they found nothing wrong with me. But here's where I was very lucky, and I was in the right place. They kept me there. And as I lay there, I began to feel worse. I began to feel a band of pressure. I could describe it exactly. It went all the way from here all the way down, this wide. And I started to have some stomach pain. You know the acid reflux ads where they show nuts and bolts inside the stomach? That's what it felt like. And doctors would drop by and say, "Do you have acid reflux disease?" And I said, "Well, I never had before today." They finally did the same tests over again several hours later, and they found a slight change. The EKG had changed this tiny bit. The blood test had changed a tiny bit, and on the basis of those changes over a period of several hours, they rushed me into the operating room and did angioplasty. They went in and looked, and sure enough, I had blockage, which they cleared. But I remember going into the hospital. I was being wheeled down the hall in a wheelchair with tears streaming down my face, thinking, my life as I know it has changed forever. So I will start with heart attack warning signs, and the first one, the Hollywood heart attack. That's where the person has a sudden shock, grabs their heart, and sinks to the floor. I'm told it feels like an elephant sitting on your chest and that pain radiates down one arm. I wouldn't know. I had never had this symptom. Recall that what I had was you could put your hand over your chest and press just firmly without any pain, and that would be the amount of pressure I had, and it was very, very brief. So not everyone has the dramatic Hollywood heart attack. I had a sister-in-law who was the baby of her family, and she amused everyone. She had big, round, innocent eyes and a sort of a halo of blonde hair, and somebody said that the inside of her head was sort of like a dandelion fluff. And one day she told the family a story that had us convulsed with laughter. It seems she had taken her children out picking flowers alongside a railroad track. And at one point they were forced to jump to one side and fling themselves down and hold on to the grass for dear life as a freight train, a boxcar with an engine with approximately 20 boxcars, thundered past them, apparently, surprising them. She said, it just snuck up on us. Now, if you've ever heard a freight train with 20 boxcars attached, it's pretty hard to imagine how it can sneak up on you. But when I talk to people who have had heart attacks, the first reaction is, I can't believe this happened to me. Nobody ever believes it can happen to them or that it can happen to them. And yet day after day, I see perfectly healthy women who had no predisposing factors, supposedly saying, I don't know how it happened. So I hope to give you some insight into how it can happen. Don't let the freight train sneak up on you. The first is chest discomfort. That can be pain. It can be pressure that is very painful. It can be a squeezing. I know of one woman who felt as if her chest was being squeezed like this, her heart. Burning. Another woman I know said she felt as if her chest was on fire, as if she had at least third-degree burns, although there was not a mark on her. Mild to severe pressure in the center of your chest that lasts more than a few minutes or comes and goes. That pressure that I had in the swimming pool was the first pressure I felt, and I didn't feel anything again until a week and a half later when I finally developed this band down my front. So chest pressure is just one possible symptom. Upper body discomfort in one or both arms, back, neck, jaw, or stomach. Okay, I know a woman who woke up in the middle of the night with both of her elbows hurting. What a strange symptom. Somehow she was once again one of these people who were wise enough to know that this was very strange, and she suspected a heart attack, and it was. Feelings of anxiety. Sometimes heart attack can masquerade as a panic attack. I don't know if you know what that feels like, but your heart beats more rapidly and you kind of break out in a cold chill. And it can be a panic attack. A friend of mine, because I now have lectured all my friends and they're constantly on the alert for cardiac symptoms, went to the ER and they determined that she was having a panic attack. But it could be a heart attack. Extreme fatigue. Now, if you're a woman, you're probably fatigued an awful lot of the time. I tend to know the schedules that women live on. But the fatigue that you get with a heart attack it's a little as if you have a tank somewhere and somebody pulled the plug out and everything drained out the bottom. That's how I felt when I just wanted to curl up into a ball and go to sleep. Here are the risk factors you can definitely change, and one is blood pressure. How many of you know your blood pressure? Recently. Of course, it can change. it changes all day long. It changes even between walking from this room back to your office. But nevertheless, optimal, at rest, it should be about 120/80. I found out recently that for every 10 points that top number goes up, your chance of a heart attack doubles. So at 130, it's double. At 140, it's double, 4 times what it was at 120. At 150, it's 8 times. It's quite an increase. Triglycerides. I was telling a little story before we started here about a little news clip I saw on KARE 11 a couple of years ago, and I've been dying to get a copy of it since then. 2 young reporters, a male and a female, volunteered to be the volunteers, the guinea pigs, in an experiment in which their blood was taken and their vital signs were taken, and they ate their way through a fast food meal, very heavy meal of a cheeseburger with bacon and French fries, and then the richest dessert on the menu. And then the blood was drawn and the vital signs were taken again. And one of the interesting things to me is that the nurse held up the before and after vials of blood. And the before, you saw red blood, pretty much the color you see every time you get your blood drawn at the doctor's office. The after vial looked like chicken fat, yellow, viscous. Oh. And then the nurse said, your heart rate has gone up. Your heart is having to pump harder to get this viscous stuff going through your arteries. So when you eat a very rich meal and you eat all these things at once, those are the triglycerides, the fat that's circulating through your bloodstream and making your heart work harder. Now, if you already have some plaque in there, you can see that's pretty dangerous. So Thanksgiving can be a real challenge, particularly for some of us. Don't eat it all at once. You know, maybe if you could eat some and eat a little bit more a few hours later, that would be far healthier. So now we're going to swing off into what I'm really an expert on, and that is managing stress. And I'm going to tell you my real story. I said I had a heart attack and it never should have happened and I'd done everything right and I'd been so good all my life. Well, here's what really happened about 2 or 2.5 years prior to my heart attack. First of all, I moved out of a house in California that I'd lived in for 37 years. And if you've ever lived in a house for 37 years, you know how much can get jammed into all the corners. It took me over a year to clear that out to move. And I was making weekly trips to the Goodwill and to the dump. Then I moved cross country to a very new environment. That's stressful, even though I liked it. In the meantime, as I moved, my 96-year-old aunt in Arizona was going into the final stages before she died, and she had made me her power of attorney for health care and for her finances. So I was having to fly back and forth, taking care of these things. And she did finally die. And I was faced with handling a will, and there was some confusion, at which point from the other side of the family, her married side, relatives popped up who hadn't been seen in 30 or 40 years, but who seemed to know some very powerful attorneys. And I was battling them, long distance, this is very hard. In the meantime, my best friend in California had had a head injury and could not work, and so I invited her to come live with me, got another house here, so I took on a mortgage in retirement so that she could move in with me. Her head injury had led into mental illness that included this hoarding disorder. Have you ever seen these programs where, yes, you know, piles of garbage and possessions? And I was coping with this all at once and trying to move into this new house and paint the walls. And that sounds like a heck of a lot of stress, doesn't it? Who can blame me for having a heart attack? Well, we now know that 10% of our stress is due to what happens to us. 90% of stress is due to what we think about what's happening to us. And the really good news there is that you can control that. You can learn to control that.
You were talking about staying away from lighted screens, things like that, before bedtime. You said 2 hours?
Yeah, they say 3, but I think if you're a working person and you come home, that doesn't leave you much time.
No. Is there any benefit to 1 hour or 45 minutes? I mean,
it's probably better, yes.
Okay.
I would say so, yeah. I have a couple of programs that are on late, and I do watch them, but then I spend time listening to some music or reading from my Kindle, and it seems to be okay. So you might want to check that out for yourself. Start with 45 minutes or an hour, and if that doesn't help you get better sleep, then extend it.
All right. Thank you, Lynette.
Thank you.